Our Christmas Tree by Abbie Farwell Brown. This is a LibriVox recording. All LibriVox recordings are in the public domain. For more information or to volunteer, please visit LibriVox.org. Our Christmas Tree. O all ye green things upon the earth, bless ye the Lord. Praise him and magnify him forever. Our Christmas tree, evergreen and pungent, full of magical fruitage, quivering with gifts. We could not do without it. What should take its place? Remember that mysterious holiday smell which pervaded the house, refusing to be kept secret? Isn't one's childhood wrapped up and laid away in such fragrance, to roll out some day as sweet as ever? How the green pyramid could dignify the shabbiest, the showiest room. It made cheery even a hospital corner or a prison refectory. Granite pillars warmed to its neighborhood and welcomed its fragile buttressing. Incense blended naturally with its breath and the glee of young voices. Robert Frost calls it something the city, had left behind and could not do without and keep its Christmas. Radiant with candles, glittering with tinsel and colored candy, hung with odd-shaped packages. The dedicated Christmas tree. When we were children, we did not think of it as a sacrifice, but of course it was, as Frost goes on to remind us. He asked if I would sell my Christmas trees, my woods, the young fir balsams, like a place where houses are all churches and have spires. I hadn't thought of them as Christmas trees. 1,000 Christmas trees at what apiece? 1,000 trees would come to $30. A living thing, cut down, hustled to a city market, mishandled, set up in the name of love, finally thrown out on the ash heap to die. Something wrong about that. Our Christmas tree is not of these, but truly evergreen, though we could not do without it, and therefore our Christmas tree is not lopped for the parlor, draped and festooned by us. Perhaps it does not know that it is a Christmas tree. It stands where it has grown of itself, on its own sturdy roots grappling among granite ledges, in a sloping pasture above the gray Atlantic, a tall green psalm of joy. Snow is wreathed in its branches. The sea fog, drifting salty, has spangled it with crystals. On every spray the green crosses blazon their Christmas significance. Dripping, resinous candles lift proudly, compounded of rich summer ingredients, lit with invisible fire. A sweet odor exhales on the silent frosty air, a Christmas carol. The tree bears gifts, whereof we know. I see pine trees and fir trees torn by northern blasts. I see granite boulders and cliffs. Orion and the windy Pleiades, instead of Vega, and the familiar stars at the summer zenith, look down upon the little snow-swept cottage. The big stump for the bird bath is a shapeless marble mass. The avenue under the evergreens gleams a crystalline tunnel. The gap in the spruce hedge, our escape to the sea, is sealed. Where are the worn paths to the beach and the cliff and the cave? Quite charmed away by white magic. But there are trails of mink and squirrel and field mouse, and the hieroglyphics of winter birds. Do they spell the Christmas cipher for other eyes than ours? On the mountain where under green pavilions the wild deer shelter, will they kneel and worship on the holy midnight, as proper kine have always done since Bethlehem's stable? Across the halcyon sea the lighthouse twinkles, a star of safety in the east. Out on still lonelier isles than ours, visited but by seabirds this Christmastide, are sheep without a shepherd. Perhaps they too, piteous symbols, bleat a feeble stave this night. The high road around the isle is impassable. Santa Claus must come on snowshoes, if at all, to the scattered fishermen's homes. The nearest of these is a mile from our tree and our empty nest. Under the low roof, sturdy youngsters of the old Yankee breed are dreaming eagerly of their Christmas tree, which Dad lugged from the woods yesterday, cloistered with which in the sitting-room Mother has been mysteriously busy ever since. Mother herself is dreaming of the new magic, which for the first time will put them all actually in touch with the main, the city, the whole round rejoicing world on Christmas Day, no longer isolated from music and caroling and the words of the congregation. The fisher-folk of the Isles will listen in. Humanity is drawn close as never before by magic through a tree. The stark mass stands on a knoll near the well, with mysterious fruit of wire and pin. Waking, Mother can see it from her bed, and blesses it for its gifts. Why are there trees I never walk under, but large and melodious thoughts descend upon me? I think they hang there winter and summer on those trees and drop fruit as I pass. Acres and acres of Christmas trees like ours all over the country of the pointed firs, keeping their fragrant vigil without the help of man, as their ancestors kept it through the ages. Acres and acres of evergreen spire up from snowy tracks on violet hills into crisp New England air. Along our whole stern and rock-bound coast from Manon to Cape Cod, the Pine Tree State, the Granite State, the Old Bay State, staunch names of our own evergreen ancestors. On headland and hill still bearing significant Indian names, stand trees identical with those that first saw the pale faces that thrilled the earliest voyagers to this land. Vikings, Basque and Breton fishermen, wild adventurers in their wooden ships with sails squared from tall trees, Cabot looking for mahogany, Pring for sassafras, Gosnold, who liked the savages but misliked the weather, Cartier, Champlain, Hudson, Captain Smith, with the keen eyes, pirates, traders, godly colonists, unconscious of all the gifts to be shaken from these trees, but pleased with the first glimpse of them, buffeted and peevish mariners vainly seeking a passage to balmy India, picking their way warily among unknown reefs and fog-hidden islands so carelessly littered along the desolate coast. To them the Christmas trees looming through the fog must have breathed some comfort, even while destroying their hope that this was to prove a tropic land. Scent of fir balsam blowing offshore in the early morning, how rapturously one sniffs it after the reek of a city in July. Sweet almost as the remembrance of childhood's Christmas tree. How good it must have smelled to those first transatlantic voyagers sick of deep-sea brine and bilge. The air so wholesome, as I suppose not any of us found ourselves at any time more healthful, more able to labor, nor with better stomachs to such good fare as we partly brought and partly found. This is one of the precious gifts of our Christmas trees, recognized first by Captain George Weymouth, voyaging early along our coast, who added, in the quaint phraseology of 1605, this climax of his arboreal observations. In the fir tree, out of which issueth turpentine in so marvellous plenty, and so sweet as our surgeon and others affirmed, they never saw so good in England, we pulled much gum congealed on the outside of the bark, which smelled like frankincense. This would be great benefit for making tar and pitch. He saw rich material gifts on our trees. His words remind one of the psalmist, telling of a different zone. The trees of the Lord are full of sap, even the cedars of Lebanus which he hath planted, wherein the birds make their nests, and the fir trees are a dwelling for the stork. Good old Weymouth tells naively how he at least kept the Indians friendly in these ticklish days. He gave the savages aquae vitae, which they tasted, but would by no means drink. Our beverage they liked well, who gave them sugar candy, which after they had tasted they liked and desired more, and raisins which were given them. Weymouth goes on to say of the land, the wood she beareth is not shrubbish, fit only for fuel, but goodly tall fir, spruce, beech, birk, oak, and surely it did all resemble a stately park, wherein appear some old trees with withered tops, and other flourishing with living green boughs. Upon the hill grow notable high timber-tree masts for ships of 400 ton, and at the bottom of every hill a little run of fresh water. We cannot doubt that the Indians loved the fir trees, though they never had heard of Christmas. There seems a certain kinship between the red children and the green warriors of the forest. But perhaps the first white man's eyes to appraise our mainland trees were those of the sailor John Cabot, who navigated the coast in 1497, and who optimistically surmised that the redwood, il Brasilio, grows there in the silks. However, Verenzano, a Venetian sailor in command of a French ship in 1523, was the first to note our very thick forests, the trees of which were pines, cypresses, and such as grow in cold regions. Earliest recorded gift to the white man from the evergreens was a balm that the Indians knew well, but whether made from spruce, pine, fir balsam, or cedar, who now shall say? Surely it could not have been the potent hemlock of Socrates. In 1535, Jacques Cartier's sailors being sick of cold and scurvy, the Indian medicine men prescribed a drink made from the leaves of a certain evergreen tree. They boiled all the foliage of a tree as big as a full-grown oak into a tisane, which cured them all within the week. Would that we might know the secret of this brew against the old-fashioned New England cold. In 1614, Captain John Smith, the intrepid adventurer, who gave its pleasant name to New England, was studying and mapping this ragged coast, of which at first he remarked with tempered enthusiasm, such high, craggy cliffs, rocks, and stormy isles, that I wondered such great trees could grow upon so hard foundations. It is a country rather to affright than delight one. And how to describe a more plain spectacle of desolation, or more barren, I know not. Yet the sea there is the strangest fish-pond I ever saw, and those barren isles so furnished with good woods, springs, fruits, fish, and fowl. He is beginning to discover some of the gifts prized by us. Indeed, the gallant captain came to think far better of our desolate and barren littoral, perhaps imagining himself a little boy again. You shall scarce find, he says, any bay where you may not take of clams or lobsters, or both at your pleasure, and in many places load your boat if you please, nor isles where you find not fruits, birds, crabs, and mussels, or all of them, for taking at a low water. And in the harbors we frequented, a little boy might take the cunners and pinnace, and such delicate fish, at the ship's stern, more than 6 or 10 can eat in a day. All which are to be had in abundance, observing by their seasons. But if a man will go at Christmas to gather cherries in Kent, he may be deceived. Though there be plenty in summer, so here these plenties have each their season, as I have expressed. Again the excellent captain, waxing eloquent as he thinks of the colonists whom he desires to transplant to the New World, exclaims, and surely by reason of these sandy cliffs and cliffs of rocks, beside the greatness of the fish and moderate temper of the air, who can but approve this as a most excellent place, both for health and fertility, and of all 4 parts of the world that I have yet seen not inhabited, could I but have means to transport a colony, I would rather live here than anywhere. And so, after 10 generations of ancestors who have put up with certain difficulties in these regions, and have indeed built a civilization rather creditable thereupon, so likewise say we. Cabot, Weymouth, Willoughby, Grenville, Pring, Popham, Smith, these names of the earliest New England trippers have a proper familiar ring. First and last, they are not unknown today in towns whose names are also echoed from the motherland. But what had Henry Hudson of the Dutch East India Company to do with our tradition and our Christmas tree? He was the first summer visitor to Newport. He was the original New Yorker who passed by Cabot's discoveries with characteristic indifference. But even he could not get on without the aid of us. Growing on a headland at the mouth of the Kennebec in 1609, at a spot called by the Indians Sagadahoc, was a stout, tall tree destined to help him New York ward. Off the coast of Newfoundland, Hudson had lost his foremast, and on the 18th of July, sailing along the dangerous Maine coast, on lookout for a proper tree, he came to this place where a great river runneth up a great way, but there is 2 fathoms hard by us. We went ashore and cut us a foremast. How many tall masts of world-circling ships, nay, how many trim, beautiful ships themselves have not the Yankee shores given forth, and other ships that sought passage to more than India. It was Christmas-tide when the Pilgrims landed at Plymouth Rock, when the trees against a stormy sky their giant branches tossed. Being who they were, fir trees, even at Christmas, meant naught to them, but firewood for their poor chilled bodies, shelter for the babies and sea-worn little ones who had never heard of hanging up a stocking by a wide chimney-place. But even so, those gallant souls began straightway bring precious gifts for the evergreen tree of our tradition. It was a maypole at Merrymount, a few years later, but on Beacon Hill, not then quite so merry, but peaceful withal, it may well have been a Christmas tree. To this treeless peninsula, the Reverend William Blackstone, who was no Puritan, may very likely have imported a real Christmas tree for his red neighbors. Whether or not, like Weymouth, he made the savages happy with gifts of raisins and sugar candy, he certainly gave them hospitality and kindness, 2 more gifts which, we hope, still drop from our evergreen, our family tree, our Christmas tree. Praise the Lord upon earth, ye dragons in all deeps, fire and hail, snow and vapors, wind and storm, fulfilling his word, mountains and all hills, fruitful trees and all cedars, young men and maidens, old men and children, praise the name of the Lord. End of Our Christmas Tree by Abbie Farwell Brown.